Chapter 1. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the room as I sat in my study. The light filtered through the dusty window, illuminating the scattered remnants of my sanity. Books lay open, their pages yellowed with age, filled with the ramblings of great minds. Yet despite the wisdom contained within their words, all I could think of was the insidious presence that had seeped into my life, a malevolent force that seemed to lurk just beyond the veil of reality. It began innocently enough, an unusual chill creeping through the air, a whisper of something unseen brushing against my skin. I dismissed it at first, attributing my unease to the stress of my work. But as the days turned into weeks, the feeling morphed into something darker, a palpable dread that wrapped itself around my throat like a noose. "What's wrong with you?" my friend Charles asked one evening, concern etched across his face. We sat in my dimly lit study, the flickering candle casting ominous shadows that danced along the walls. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I have," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "Something is here with me, Charles. Something I cannot see." He chuckled, trying to dispel the tension. "You need to get out more, my friend. Perhaps a trip to the coast will clear your mind." But I knew it wasn't that simple. I felt the presence, an unseen observer, a shadow that taunted me from the corners of my vision. Sometimes in the dead of night, I could hear it breathing, the soft rasp of air that sent shivers coursing down my spine. The walls of my home closed in around me, suffocating me in a cocoon of madness. The next day, I decided to confront my tormentor. I sat in the center of the room, surrounded by candles, their flickering flames casting an eerie glow over the dim space. I closed my eyes, summoning the courage I had left. "What do you want from me?" I demanded into the silence. "Show yourself." The air thickened, and I felt a rush of cold wash over me, like the grip of death. My heart raced as I opened my eyes, and in that moment, I saw it. A dark shape, amorphous and undulating, hovering just beyond the edge of my perception. It was there, and yet not there, a grotesque mockery of existence. "Do you see me?" a voice whispered, echoing in my mind, a chorus of malice and despair. "You cannot escape me." I stumbled back, my breath hitching in my throat. "What are you?" I gasped, the words barely escaping my lips. "I am you," it replied, each syllable laced with venom. "I am your fears, your regrets, your darkest desires. You cannot banish me, for I am the truth you refuse to acknowledge." I felt my mind fracturing under the weight of its revelation. It was right. I had buried my fears deep within, but now they clawed their way to the surface, raw and bleeding. Memories long forgotten surfaced, faces twisted in agony, moments of weakness that had marked my soul. I saw the children I had failed to save, their screams echoing in my ears, their blood staining my hands. "Stop!" I cried, clutching my head as if I could physically crush the memories back into the darkness. "You're lying!" But the truth was relentless, gnawing at the edges of my sanity. Each night, the presence grew stronger, feeding on my despair, dragging me deeper into the abyss. I became a mere shell of myself, a wandering ghost trapped in a world of horror. Chapter 2. Days blurred into nights, and the walls of my study became my prison. I could no longer distinguish between reality and the nightmarish visions that plagued me. I stopped answering the door, stopped responding to Charles's calls. I became a recluse, terrified of what lay beyond my threshold. One evening the door creaked open, and I found Charles standing there, his face pale with concern. "I was worried about you," he said, stepping into the suffocating gloom. "You've been gone for too long." "I can't," I replied, my voice trembling. "You don't understand. It's here with me." "Who? What are you talking about?" His brow furrowed, confusion evident. "It's a creature, a thing that feeds on my fear. I can't let it out." My heart raced as I recalled the shape lurking in the shadows, the voice that twisted my mind into knots. He stepped closer, his expression softening. "You need help. This isn't like you. Let me in, please." I hesitated, my heart pounding in my chest, but I couldn't let him in. I couldn't expose him to the horror that had taken root in my soul. "You have to leave," I said, my voice breaking. It's too late for me. But he pushed through, and I felt a surge of panic. No! I shouted, lunging toward him. But it was too late. The moment he entered, the room thickened with dread, the presence swirling around us like a storm. Do you feel that? I gasped, clutching his arm. It's here! He looked around, bewildered. What are you talking about? There's nothing here. But I knew better. I could feel it coiling around us, its breath like ice against my skin. It's coming for you, I screamed, but the words fell on deaf ears. In an instant, the shadows coalesced, forming a grotesque figure that loomed over us, its eyes like black voids. You brought him here, it hissed, the voice an amalgamation of my fears and regrets. Now he must pay for your sins? Get away from him, I shouted, but it was too late. The creature lunged, and Charles's scream echoed through the room, a sound that would haunt me for all eternity. I watched in horror as it wrapped its tendrils around him, dragging him into the abyss, his body twisting and contorting as he fought against the invisible force. No, I cried, reaching out, but it was as if I were grasping at smoke. The darkness enveloped him, and then it was over. Charles was gone, swallowed whole by the nightmare I had unleashed. I fell to my knees, the weight of my actions crashing down on me. I had condemned him to this hell, and the laughter of the creature reverberated in my skull. You are alone now, it taunted, the words laced with a cruel delight. Embrace your despair. Chapter 3. In the days that followed, I was lost in a fog of guilt and grief. I wandered the empty halls of my home, a specter in my own life. The presence lingered, a constant reminder of my failure, the weight of it crushing me from within. I could hear whispers in the dark, the echoes of Charles's voice, pleading for release. Why did you let me in? He would ask, his tone filled with betrayal. You knew what it was. I tried to drown it out, to silence the guilt that gnawed at my soul, but it was futile. I could feel the creature growing stronger, feeding off my sorrow until it became a festering wound in my mind. My sanity frayed, slipping through my fingers like sand. Finally, I reached my breaking point. I could no longer bear the weight of my guilt, the suffocating darkness that surrounded me. I had to end it, end the torment once and for all. I gathered the last remnants of my strength and made my way to the river, the cold water glistening under the moonlight. As I stood at the edge, I felt the presence close in around me, a suffocating embrace. You cannot escape, it whispered, its breath like ice against my skin. You are mine. I'd rather die than live with you, I spat, tears streaming down my face. But deep down, I felt the truth of its words. I was trapped in a cycle of despair, and there was no way out. With a final surge of desperation, I plunged into the icy depths, the water closing around me like a shroud. I could feel the creature's laughter echoing in my mind as I sank deeper, dragging me into the abyss. Darkness enveloped me, and for a moment, I thought I might find peace. But then I felt it, its icy grip on my soul, pulling me back to the surface. You cannot escape, it hissed as I gasped for air. You will never be free. And as I flailed against the current, the realization hit me with the force of a wave. There was no escape from the horror I had created. I was forever trapped in a cycle of torment and despair, haunted by the ghosts of my past, my fate sealed in blood and sorrow. In the end, the river became my prison, a reminder that some horrors are not meant to be escaped. The darkness enveloped me, and with my last breath I understood the truth. I was never truly alive, only a vessel for the horrors that lurked within, destined to drown in my own despair.